Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 113 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, it's the first show for about 5 weeks, and a lot has happened in that time. And I've been out the country, as many of you will know, and so I'm delighted to be joined this evening by two people who have been very much in the country and very much at the forefront of the anti-fracking campaign, both in London against INEOS and up at Kirby Misperton. And of course, I refer to my good friends, Joe Boyd and Eddie Thornton, who will be joining me very shortly. But before I bring those guys into the discussion, I want to refer back almost now 4 years since I first made mention of the conjecture that the fracking agenda was potentially a forerunner, or maybe even a red herring, towards a much deeper agenda, no pun intended, i.e. the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. Now, over the course of the Fracking Nightmare series, we've made reference a couple of times to this, not least, obviously, episode 72, which you can find on the Fracking Nightmare playlist on my YouTube channel. And here I was asking the question, whether Amber Rudd and Francis Egan were in fact colluding to deceive the British public, amongst others, of course, into simply believing that this was about the national energy security, when in fact it might be about creating a network of deep boreholes for the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. Now, the reality is that the evidence that is coming into the public domain would seem to add weight to this conjecture. And of course, despite the fact that it is mentioned with increasing regularity now, the British government and Radioactive Waste Management absolutely refuse to make any comment. Of course, if it was simply a conspiracy theory, then you would think that they wouldn't hesitate to denounce any suggestion that there was any desire to do anything with the deep boreholes other than what it says on the tin. Well, one of the communities that is very concerned about this is East Lancashire. Parts of East Lancashire are licensed, although not active at the moment. But the East Lancashire anti-fracking community have set up this event in Burnley next Wednesday evening. So that's Wednesday the 15th of November. This is going to be at the Central Methodist Church Hall. So this is literally right in the centre of Burnley. It's just about a 5-minute walk from the bus station, or a 10-minute walk from Burnley Manchester Road train station. And as you can see from this map, Burnley over here is not actually licensed at the moment. It's just outside the licensed area, and there's some absolutely beautiful organic farmland in this area here. In fact, when I'm in Lancashire, I get my raw milk from the farm here. But the people of this area are concerned, very concerned, about the prospect of the wells being used for ulterior motives. And of course, if this is the case, we are looking at effectively the whole of the north of England becoming a repository for toxic nuclear waste. And of course, that makes a lot of sense, when you're a sociopath, because you want to avoid creating any cancer clusters. So you simply spread the load right across the area. And then, as cancer manifests across the whole of the north of England, you can just put it down to some other cause. So that's next Wednesday evening, Central Methodist Church Hall at in Hargreaves Street, Burnley, BB11 1DU. Now, that's a very interesting postcode, isn't it? 1DU. Depleted uranium. What a coincidence. Anyway, so if you're in the East Lancashire area, I shall look forward to you coming along. It's one of my rare public events. I now tend to spend more time on the front line or in the studio, limiting my presentations to the annual Alternative View conference, with a few exceptions. So, that said, let's meet our guest tonight, and it's with great pleasure that I'm able to hook up with you. Joe Boyd, first of all. Joe coming to us from, I'm assuming, from Merseyside.
I'm indeed, yeah. I'm at home. First time I think I've been on your show at home, so it's nice to be sitting in the office and chilling out with a cup of tea for the change.
Well, and when I spoke to you earlier today, you were actually in the library of the university, and of course you're just at the front end of your masters, having been awarded your BSc, I believe, in international relations.
Right, yeah, that's where I am at the moment. Just I was down there today, getting into my assignments and stuff. Yeah, settling down into it, enjoying it. So looking forward to the year ahead.
Well, congratulations on being awarded the degree. I know you put in an enormous amount of effort for that, and studying, with the Open University is never easy, but a sterling effort, and very well done. I believe you got a 2-1, was it?
Got a Desmond 2-2 in the end, mate.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. The bottom line is you got your degree and now you're pursuing the masters. But at the same time, you've been right at the forefront of the effort to expose and indeed challenge the INEOS Injunction. But Joe, before you get onto that, we're going to come to that later in the show, because you were also absolutely instrumental in helping to set up the Kirby Misperton protection camp, and we're joined tonight as well by Eddie Thornton, who has been pretty much full-time at Kirby Misperton since we took the field there on December the 20th last year. So actually, Eddie, you're looking remarkably fresh.
I've had a shower, Ian, and I've come back to my folks' house because as you might have seen from live streams lately, we've had a bit of connectivity problem at the camp. I don't know if the internet here in Middleton's any better, so I might be dropping out now and again, but here we are.
Okay, well, so far so good. And now, I mean, obviously, I've been out of the scene for a few weeks now, but it was wonderful to see that today there was an impromptu lorry surfer. In fact, on this picture we've got here, it looks like the surfer actually climbed on top of this officer's head. That would be a hell of an action. A lock on the skull of a North Yorkshire police officer. But
deploy 20 their officers elsewhere, because they think they had things under control at KM8, and just as they did that, someone popped up onto a lorry.
So how many officers did they have at KM today?
Say again, Ian?
How many police were at Kirby Misperton today?
I've no idea. I was in court and I was on my way back and got the news that there was a surfer. So that's all I know. I know that the police put a statement out saying there was 25 less than usual. So that should put it at about 50.
Remarkable, isn't it? I got some great shots today. I mean, obviously, this is, I'm guessing, from a drone. And here you can see the surfer on top of the truck. But the truck has actually been moved onto Third Energy's approach road. Now, I believe that initially he climbed on when the truck was still turning into the approach road.
Yeah, somebody was actually hit by the truck and went under the truck as it was turning in, and the local chap was able to climb up in the chaos that followed. And then the North Yorkshire Police told the driver to carry on into the compound. And it's interestingly that becomes Third Energy's problem, because there's a memorandum of understanding between North Yorkshire Police and Third Energy that any direct action that happens on private property must be dealt with by Third Energy. But I guess this was a bit of a grey area because North.
Eddie's.
Have you lost me?
You're back with us.
Okay, right. I don't know how far you got there.
No, we only lost a couple of seconds. You were just saying that the lorry was instructed to drive in.
Yeah, so normally that would then be Third Energy's concern, but because the police told them to do it, I guess it was the police's responsibility to bring him down. And they brought him down after dark. And it was interesting because we were watching from the top of the hill where we were droning, and we suddenly saw this little figure running across the field. And I'm not sure who it was. It may have been his wife, but somebody was able to throw warm clothes up to him beyond the security line. And then you saw the yellow security guards chasing her off down the field, but she managed to get out through the hedge. It's just another time where NLS security guards have been outfoxed by the protectors.
Well, NLSS haven't had a great week, have they? But we'll come onto that in a while. Here's another great shot. I'm guessing this is also from the drone of the surfer. Now, just to make the observation, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, this is the first time this particular individual has been involved in direct action, and it's a local farmer.
Absolutely. I mean, he has been involved in the campaign. He organises farmers' events down at the gates, and they've been very successful. But this was him taking things.
We lost.
Been greatly. Have we lost
No,
me?
okay, keep going. You're good.
Well, he, along with the rest of the community, has been incredibly saddened by the amount of equipment that's been getting through the gates. And so he decided to take it to another level, and hats off to him.
No, absolutely. And I have to say, this is, in some ways, it's a beautiful shot, but it's also a very disturbing shot. And of course, it's one that actually, because I've spent the last 2.5 weeks in the Southern Hemisphere, where I only saw either clear blue skies or skies with natural clouds, to see this sheen across the sky is very disturbing. I know a lot of people don't want to see it, but nonetheless, it's an issue that I think is going to become much more of a focus over the coming years. But now, anyway, moving on. You said about the equipment that's being put on site, and we're looking on screen here, and this is pretty much the pad at Kirby Misperton as it stands right now, literally ready to frack. So I'm guessing, Eddie, that basically the only thing that is required now is for the Secretary of State to actually sign off and grant Third Energy approval to start running the pumps.
That's how we to local residents saying they're ready to frack. But interestingly, Greg Clark hasn't given that sign-off yet, and Parliament's gone into recess. He could still do that during recess, but it's my understanding that he's had a wealth of letters from concerned people in this area and around the country. And also, there is the rumblings of some further legal action that might hold this up. I can't say too much about that at this point.
Okay, now, I mean, obviously, one hopes that whatever has landed on his desk will actually cause him to pause for thought or even further research. And of course, every single day of delay in him signing that off is going to cost Third Energy, because all of this equipment will have been hired on a day rate, and so it will be mounting up. And of course, this is a company that is totally reliant on access to debt.
Well, I don't know if everybody's been following the story. It was in the Times business section, front page of the business section a couple of days ago. Third Energy have once again, for the third time running, failed to produce their accounts. They've been threatened with being struck off from Companies House twice, and they've done it again. And it's our understanding that they're now surviving on a loan from Barclays Bank, and they don't want to show their accounts until they strike gas, because we're going to allow to run an untested technology in our beautiful area. And Kevin Hollenrake is refusing to comment on the fact that A, their accounts are being hidden from the public, and B, they're based in the Cayman Islands. So if anything does go wrong, they can just jump ship and return over there.
And even though it is 97% owned by Barclays Bank, but it's actually owned by a Barclays offshore trust. So if anything does go wrong, then obviously, as you rightly say, everybody really just does a runner, just like Link Energy did in Australia, and just says, sort of, catch me if you can.
Absolutely. And it's going to be us, the community, that are going to be paying the cleanup fees, unfortunately. And our MP just seems completely willfully blind to that fact.
Well, I mean, as we've discussed many, many times on past episodes of Fracking Nightmare, Kevin Hollinrake was shooed in to that role to replace Anne McIntosh, who is now Baroness Pickering. But the reason that she was deselected was because she was vehemently anti-fracking and, of course, secured a commitment from John Dewar of Third Energy that they wouldn't frack. But she was removed from the seat to be replaced by, well, an estate agent, which pretty much sums it up, really, doesn't it? But I saw some pictures and some video footage of Kevin Hollinrake at the march in Kirby Misperton on Saturday, and to say he looked decidedly uncomfortable is a bit of an understatement.
Can you hear me, Ian? Because I think we may have frozen.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I cannot believe he turned up at that rally. It just shows what a Teflon man he is. He just seems to have no conscience. He was absolutely mobbed by his constituents who are furious with him. But, you know, I mean, these people are picked, aren't they, to be able to just, things bounce off them and they don't feel anything. I don't know how he dared come and stand in our protest.
Well, and I mean, if he thought for 1 second that he was going to be able to articulate a meaningful defence of the industry, then that really does show how naive he is, because the vast majority of people there on Saturday were, I would guess, far better researched on the subject than he could ever be.
Absolutely, and we were supported by the trade unions, which is a very strong voice and a really worthwhile companion in this campaign, because it's not the idea of environment or jobs. It's, you know, they're saying we can create 1 million jobs through green energy, and these jobs in fracking are temporary and destructive. So it was really good to have Unite and the other unions marching with us.
No, absolutely. It was an impressive event. It's just a pity it wasn't on a weekday. But hopefully some people who came down on Saturday will be motivated to come along and join the people at the gates there during the week. Now, I just want to take the opportunity to flag up some of the creative actions that have occurred in the past few weeks. I believe this one might even be yourself. This was you on top of the second tower, I believe, outside the gates.
Yeah, and this one wasn't set up as an obstruction. This was a viewing platform because, as you yourself know, people filming have been targeted by North Yorkshire Police. So we decided to use a tower to kind of give us the benefit of a bit of elevation, so that we couldn't be disturbed from evidence gathering and sharing our story. And the police didn't like it. That was a climbing team that was shipped in from West Yorkshire. I've actually appeared in court today relating to this tower, and I've been charged with obstructing a PC in their course of duty and causing danger to other road users. Which, when we read through the evidence, and I'm not going to go into it, but my lawyer was absolutely pissing herself laughing.
Yeah, I got a feeling that they'll just keep this one hanging over you as an intimidatory measure, and it'll probably be dropped before it actually gets to a full hearing.
Well, yeah, because they've got me where they want me now, really. They've got a punitive bail condition that means I'm not allowed on Hampton Road. So effectively, I'm banned from the protest site.
So it is an intimidatory measure. Well, but you inspired this tower, because this was Tower 3, right outside the gates, and this one seemed to cause the police no end of concern. They didn't seem to know how to deal with it. And I believe that eventually they had to get the same climbing team in to get these people out of the lock-on.
Yeah, this was a beautifully executed action right under the police's nose. As you can see, it's right slap bang in the middle of the gate there. And that took the whole day for them to work out how to get those two down. It was a great action. And yeah, just another really creative way that the protectors are responding to the challenge that Third Energy and North Yorkshire Police are presenting.
And then here's one. This was, I think, one of two, where the Hampton Road was blocked at either end.
Yeah, that was very unpopular with the community. It seems like the folk of Rydale aren't as radical as, say, the French or the Spanish, who would have been blockading train stations and closing down oil refineries. This was very unpopular with the local community,
well,
unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to comment on that in a second. This, I have to say, is probably my favourite. I think this is one of the most creative lock-ons that I've seen. I think it was nicknamed the Bird Table.
Yeah, and there were two of those again either side of the gate.
Yeah, those are beautiful. And of course, this one, which really got a lot of media attention. This was three people who climbed the rig. And I have to say, they chose probably the worst possible weekend weather-wise, because I believe they were subjected to some pretty strong winds.
And one of them climbed up there forgetting that he had vertigo. So he was in the middle of Storm Brian with fear of heights. But that was a brilliant action, and they've had to increase their security tenfold because of it.
Excellent, excellent. Now, Joe, you've obviously been otherwise engaged with your studies and the challenge with INEOS, but of course you were, along with Eddie, a participant in the very first lock-on at Preston New Road. What's your thoughts on the way the campaign has been unfolding at Kirkby Misperton?
It's been interesting to watch, actually. It's been interesting, you know, multiple actions, different types. You know, I agree with Eddie. Some of the communities you can never be pleased one way or another. So it's just trying to work. What struck me more than anything else is the way it's being dealt with away from the site, you know, on the roads around the area, and the policing operation and security guards. I mean, that's been pretty striking to me the last couple of days, especially to see the girl getting pushed and through into the side of the road and stuff like that. I mean, they've got no jurisdiction in them. They've got no jurisdiction in them areas. So, I mean, I've obviously learned a lot from this injunction with INEOS, and you know, a lot of things fit together, going like back to, you know, long before Kirkby Misperton going the way. I suspect some of it started up at Marriott, and it seems to be a case of like they're just standing back. It's almost as if the case they've all been working together for months on end, and they're going to deal with it through the injunction. They're all pretty much sure they're going to get it, whether that's the police, whether that's the energy companies, whether that's the strategic security services like that are up at Kirkby Misperton, or the ones who are down on the south coast, Eclipse Strategic Security Services. You know, these people have been working oil and gas in Kuwait, Iraq, like that. You know, and as I was saying before, you know, the other issue is, which is concerning me, which we're still trying to find out the evidence of, is Dave Jones, North Yorkshire Chief Constable of Police. We'd like to know whether he was at that meeting in May down in London, because it almost seems to be, with the memorandum of understanding that's come out today, as if these people have just all been corralling each other into one avenue, and they've set it up, because why would they have a memorandum of understanding to say, well, we're not going to deal with the rest? They must all be working together, which is striking, because that's saying this stuff's going straight up towards the Home Office. And you know, only last year, you know, people were up in uproar because anti-fracking campaigners were on the domestic extremist list, but all along that list has continued to be going, and that's not a good sign that people are being victimised like that, but trying to protect air and water and community life.
So just to put things in perspective there for people who aren't aware, there is, again, we have to say that at the moment it's conjecture, but it's conjecture based on a number of pieces of the jigsaw appearing, and that is whether or not Dave Jones, who is North Yorkshire's Chief Constable, and is also head of the National Association of Chief Constables, head of communities policing.
He's leader of the National Police Chiefs Council in citizens and policing here. So, you know, it was the NPCC who strongly advised INEOS about the injunction. So, you know, these areas need to be looked at. Not yet. I like you said, it's conjecture at this moment, but it seemed more likely that they've all been working together on this issue for a long time, and that's concerning, because what's happened to you know, they're throwing out messages saying that they're there to facilitate protest, that they're there to facilitate the community and stuff like that, but all along, you know, the National Police Chief Council are the ones who strongly advised INEOS for the injunction. That we know is fact, because that was in the High Court statements. So, you know, there's some stuff there that is really getting scrutinised.
So if this is correct, I mean, and there's certainly some substance to this, then what it's suggesting is that the police have effectively been colluding with what is ostensibly a foreign corporation to effectively usurp existing legislation and create their own legal parameters by establishing an injunction in the High Court.
Indeed, it was there, you know, it was there in the papers. UCOG were there, the CTPNOC, which is counter-terrorism unit, you know, so this was top-level stuff, and everyone to do with the industry, policing, extremism units, they were all at this meeting. So, yeah, you know, hopefully we'll get the minutes of the meeting. We're not hopeful, but, you know, there's a FOI's gone in and stuff like that right now, but it's stuff that we need, it's stuff that people should be knowing, you know. These are public bodies, you know, and people are being misled.
Well, you know, I mean, I don't say this lightly, but you know, in many respects, you know, the UK is effectively an experiment. And, you know, the belief of the establishment is that the population is either so strapped with debt or is so distracted by, you know, the bread and circuses, you know, routines, you know, EastEnders, Coronation Street, Strictly Come Dancing, Big Brother, I'm a Celebrity, and all the other BS that is pumped out to distract, and they can literally get away with this slide into the corporatist police state. And sadly, you know, in North Yorkshire, this is still what most people in North Yorkshire believe that North Yorkshire police is all about, because, you know, it's a relatively crime-free area. I mean, obviously it has its hotspot, shall I say, and those hotspots are where the custody suites are. So that's ostensibly York, Harrogate, and Scarborough. And, you know, the rest of the county is really quite rural. And, you know, I know that there are areas of the county where people don't lock their cars and they don't lock their front doors because there's no history of crime. But as we discussed in the last episode of Fracking Nightmare, episode 112, where Kevin Blows of Netpol was my guest, and we looked and discussed the advancing police state agenda, and obviously how this agenda is being foisted upon the British public and also upon the police in some respects, particularly the lower ranks, who, you know, have no real idea of what's occurring here, and you know, probably are not how should I say, they're not, it's beyond their pay grade to even comprehend the deeper machinations here. But what we saw earlier this week with the private security behaviour, NLSS, is really quite disturbing. And whilst this footage has certainly been, I think, shared quite extensively on social media, and it was played out in full at the end of yesterday's UK column news, I'm going to play it again, you know, for people that haven't seen it, because I think it's absolutely crucial that people see how private security believe that they can behave on the public highway. So let's take a look at this.
I have different opinions of what you've got to say. And you might not agree with opinions what I say, and I don't agree with opinions what you say. So
the way that your men acted this morning was not a matter of opinion, that was out of order. They were incredibly aggressive, they were incredibly abusive. They targeted me and one of the other women specifically.
come on, yeah, come on,
Get out of the fucking road.
come on, come on.
There's one guy there who, you know, he actually turned around and said to me, I'm going to start fucking punching in a minute, and then he raised his fist to me.
And that's all on film.
I'm gonna start hitting people with it, get the fuck off! No! I'm gonna start hitting people with it, get the fuck off! No! I'm gonna start hitting people with it, get the fuck off! No!
Punching women, threatening me and another girl with threats of punching us in the face, that's a matter of opinion, whether that's out of order, is it?
Well, it's.
I don't think it is it? Let's be clear.
It's the way different guards.
He shouldn't really be doing
different
this
guards
job,
react
should
to
he?
things.
Are you proud of yourself?
Get out of the
Are you
road.
fucking proud of yourself?
Get out of the road
You're
now.
fucking pussy. Look
Come
at
on.
you. Pushing women around.
Get out of the road then, you
Come on.
retard.
You're out of your
Out of the way.
jurisdiction. You don't have any
out of the
fucking
way.
right
Road.
to touch me. I will press charges against you.
Good luck.
And then there's the other guy. He jumped on our friend's back and smashed his head into the concrete.
This is a fucking assault, mate.
This is an assault now. You're assaulting me.
Citizens arrested.
Let me go, mate. Just fucking let me go.
Calm down.
Come on.
I'm gonna start hitting people with it. Get the fuck off. No. At the end of the day,
It's just assaulting me.
Let me go, mate. You heard me. Please, mate.
It's a man.
Calm down.
Please, mate.
Stay
You
there.
heard me.
Please.
You heard me, mate.
Stay down. Come on.
I can't breathe.
Do you think that that's acceptable?
If it was to his reasonable force.
It wasn't reasonable force. How is that possibly reasonable force? You're a thug, you!
Because there's a line, isn't there, and punching women is surely beyond.
Well, it's like I said.
no, it's not.
It's a different opinion from.
Punching women
No,
while you're working as a security guard is acceptable behaviour in your opinion. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, I didn't say that.
get out of the road then.
Big men out you. Hey?
Yeah, I'm a
men
thug.
hitting
What's the
women.
problem?
Stop threatening women. Hey?
Just
Big
because you're a
man.
woman doesn't mean you can block the road,
Big
does
man.
it?
Big man.
Hey, just
Hey?
out of the way.
Get out of the road.
If there was a woman being attacked by a guy, I would step in. I don't care whether she's the fracking queen herself. That's not acceptable behaviour. And the fact that you seem to think that it is really quite disturbing.
Well,
Having
isn't-
been
isn't-
quite
isn't though.
quite badly physically attacked this morning, I find that that's quite upsetting. That you think that that's okay.
All depends on how much reasonable force she goes.
Move out the way.
You weren't doing that 2 minutes ago.
Move out the way.
Right, this one,
Move out the way.
why don't you put your
Move out the way then. Move out the way now.
He's a work colleague. We stick as a team. That's what we have to do. We have to look out for each other, man.
Yeah, I'm a
men
thug.
hitting
What's the
women.
problem?
Stop threatening women. Go home and talk to your wives, see what they think about reasonable force and punching women. Go and talk to your daughters. If they disagree with you, is it reasonable force to punch them? To even raise your fist to threaten to punch them?
I've never done it, so I can't comment on that.
No, and there's a reason you've never done it, isn't there? Because it isn't acceptable, is it?
I don't.
As a man, you're not a man. Exactly, you wouldn't be a man if you beat your wife.
I'm not a wife beater.
Exactly, that's my point.
Well, I guess the right question is, when did you stop beating your wife? Joe, you've obviously seen that footage a couple of times now. What's your thoughts on that?
It's absolute disgraceful, and I've been putting messages out. This is like malicious. It's like malicious security. These people at the top of these companies, they've been trained in Kuwait and Iraq and places like that, and their strategic security service is what they are. And this is what the injunction is all about. They are trying to bypass the police, the local police bodies in these communities and stuff like that, and they're trying to get these militia on the ground. I've been saying it for months. What they want is just steroided up security guards just in the back of the van, and they just push anyone around. And what people got to remember is this is happening. If this injunction goes through, this is happening. This is going to happen to your mother, your grandmother, wherever they are. You may be working down in London while your grandmother or your mother is living in a rural village. But these people are coming in and they're just going to roughshod over anyone, push anyone out the way. Whatever they've got to do, that's what they're ordered to do. That's what this is about. This isn't a conspiracy. This is a fact. I've seen it in the injunction papers. This is exactly what they're up to. Well, they want to take the powers away from the police forces and give it to private security firms.
Well, we'll actually have a look at some of the evidence that supports that hypothesis in just a second. Now, Eddie, you were there filming. This was 6:45 in the morning. I mean, the behaviour there of the central character who we see, and I know it appears that he's raising his fist there, but that's actually the guy standing behind him with the camera. But nonetheless, it is a good graphic photograph. But I mean, he was clearly out of control. I mean, it was almost like he was recovering from a night on the drink or you know, the steroids or whatever. But you know, that is not what I would consider to be rational behaviour of any professional. And in fact, even if he was operating in Afghanistan or Iraq, he would not be treating the civilians, or should not be treating the civilians in that way.
Well, nobody should treat anybody in that way, least of all on the public highway. I think that a lot of these guys, and he wasn't the only one, he was by far the most aggressive, but not the only aggressive person that morning. I think they've been gagging for this. They've been held behind their fence all this time whilst we've been causing problems for their employer. And the police are the ones who've been dealing with this. This was the first kind of face-to-face action that the security guards had with us, and they were going to make the most of it. And that guy in particular, I would be very surprised if he still has his SIA badge. I would be very surprised if he's still working for the company. Derek Led of NLSS would be crazy to keep him on the list.
Well, let's have a look at Derek Laird, because I think this is a real enigma, because this is the last published accounts of Next Level Security Services, and you know, he had a similarly named company which he liquidated before setting this one up. And as we know, there's normally a reason for doing that. It's normally to escape some liabilities that your previous limited entity has ramped up, and then start afresh with another limited company. And as you can see, although this is from 2016, you know, they're not exactly in great shape. I mean, they only had £1,000 in cash. They had a negative net worth of £3,200, assets of £6,400, and liabilities of nearly £10,000. And Derek Laird is the sole proprietor of this company. And as Joe rightly acknowledges, most of these guys are ex-military. And in fact, he also had a security recruiting company. And I don't think it's rocket science to hypothesize that the people that he was looking to recruit were people who he was associated with when he was in uniform. So here he is, looking very macho. I mean, personally, I can't, I fail to comprehend the obsession with firearms, but, boys will have their toys. But nonetheless, Derek Laird has an interesting history, because just a few years ago, this is from the Stockton Press, and it was reported that Army veteran on battle against cancer that was only discovered when his wife urged him to get checked. And this is referring to Derek Laird, who says, "I had total confidence in the hospital staff who were there to save me." Now, he had a very fast-growing lymphoma tumour, and he decided that he would undergo chemotherapy. And in this article, he was quoted as saying, "I'd gone from never having a sick day in my life to all of a sudden being laid in a hospital bed. It just goes to show how there is no typical person cancer gets. I'm lucky to say I beat it, and touch wood, it will never come back." Now, my guess is that Derek Laird has, thought that all his birthdays had come at once by picking up this contract with Third Energy. But, the enigma here is that here is a cancer survivor on point, providing the corporate enforcement for an industry that has a, I will say, proven track record of causing cancer or an increase in cancer rates wherever it establishes a footprint. Now, this is an article that I picked up from the Telegraph, almost 4 years old now. Fracking chemicals could cause infertility, cancer, and birth defects. Hormone-distorting chemicals involved in the fracking process could cause health problems to communities living near the sites if they are accidentally spilled into the groundwater, a study has found. And it goes on, people with homes close to fracking sites could be at greater risk of suffering infertility, cancer, and birth defects from chemicals used in the process. US scientists found that ground and surface water had been contaminated by hormone-disrupting chemicals because of accidental spills. Endocrine-disrupting chemicals are substances that can interfere with the normal functioning of the endocrine system and can lead to infertility, cancer, and birth defects. And birth defects has certainly been flagged up as a major issue in Vernal, in Utah, since the industry became established there a few years ago. More than 700 chemicals are used in the process, and many of them disturb hormone function. So here is a guy who has been given the gift of life, having defeated a lymphoma tumor. And now he is effectively making his living by putting whole communities at risk from enduring or having to endure that which he himself has managed to beat. What's your thoughts on this, guys? Joe?
Well, it's like you've just said. I mean, obviously, I was at the High Court last week, and it was interesting to the statement of Tom Pickering as well, and he was saying about, like, he cannot keep the well site safe and secure. But then on the other hand, he's saying the chemicals routinely used on shale gas sites are ecotoxic, having a detrimental effect on biological organisms, especially at the population, community, ecosystem, and biosphere levels, carcinogenic, causing the formation of cancer, mutagenic, any physical or chemical agent that changes the genetic material, usually DNA, of an organism, and thus increases the frequency of mutations above the natural background level, and teratogenic, relating to or causing malformations of an embryo or fetus. So this one, he's had a scare of cancer, and then he's on a site with all this gear around, and plus he's employing men as well. It's like crazy, absolute craziness.
Absolutely, and by the way, that was absolutely fascinating to read in Tom Pickering's statement, because previously I've heard Pickering wax lyrical at public events as to how all the chemicals that they use are completely safe. You know, there's nothing to worry about. And there he is in a witness statement submitted in support of trying to secure the injunction, actually admitting that the chemicals that are used are endocrine disrupting. Absolutely. Eddie. Eddie, what's your thoughts?
Well, me and Derek have a bit of a personal thing going on. I said he was going to have a mental breakdown by the end of this campaign, and he said, I'm going to be in prison. So we're going to see which one comes out true. But the health of his company is also something that he needs to be worried about, because we've been contacted by a rich benefactor just yesterday who said, let me choose the lawyer, let me pay for it. I'm going to take this company to the cleaners.
Well, you know, I think that Derek Laird has some very serious reflection that he needs to undertake. You know, maybe he doesn't yet understand how the universe works. But, you know, I think he might learn the hard way that having been given the gift of life to now be on point for an industry that has a proven track record of serious negative health impacts, way beyond what we know it does to the ecology, then I think that Derek Laird needs to absolutely reflect on that. And maybe his family need to help him to reflect on that. And, you know, pull the plug now, Derek. If you want this company to succeed, first of all, you have a problem because you're employing Neanderthals that are out of control, and you clearly do not have the capability of establishing an ethos within your company as to how your men need to behave, because they have effectively assaulted members of the public. As was pointed out to them, they have no jurisdiction to act as police. Despite the fact that we know the British government is working towards that, that is not the case today. So I think, Eddie, I mean, I hope that he doesn't have a nervous breakdown. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Neither would I wish him to have a relapse. I mean, I think it's absolutely amazing that, you know, he's managed to beat this. But, you know, if he's not aware of it, I would, and if he's not watching, I doubt he's watching, but maybe somebody could actually draw his attention to this, because if he wants to have a look at the evidence for himself, then go to the website for Fracking Nightmare, which is frackingnightmare.com. And over on the left-hand side of the page there, you'll see the downloads button. And there's only one download on this whole site, and it's a download that's been downloaded nearly 13,000 times over the last, 4 years now. And this downloads this Excel spreadsheet. And this is just a snippet of it. But this is the work of an amazing lady by the name of Dr. Theo Colborn, who sadly left this mortal coil a couple of years ago now. But she gifted this work to those who were concerned about the unconventional gas industry. And over the past 15 years or so, she has compiled this incredible database of the chemicals used in the US. And where possible, she'd broken down the proprietary products, not only listing the chemicals, what they were used for in the process, but also all of the negative health impacts. So, you know, Tom Pickering has admitted in his witness statement that the chemicals that are used are dangerous to human health. Exotoxic, dangerous to the human skeleton. So here's the data. Take a look at this, Mr. Laird, and come to your own determination. But if you are determined to, how should I say, contravene the basic laws of nature, which is that when you are gifted an opportunity to have another stab at life, where having perhaps almost lost it through cancer, then the last thing you need to be doing is facilitating an industry that has this track record. Now, you know, to be fair to him, he was so taken by the effect of the treatment and the fact that he nailed this tumor that he decided to devote some of his efforts to raising money for the Lymphoma Association. And using his CrossFit training skills, he was going to organise a rope climb equivalent to the height of Everest. Well, you know, that's very generous of you, Derek. But what are you going to do? Are you going to do this for every member of the community in Kirkby Misperton over the next generation or so that starts to suffer from ill health as a result of the contamination emanating from a site that you have helped facilitate? And don't think for one moment that you're working for a company that is whiter than white, because thanks to the work of some outstanding researchers, not least Russell Scott, who tweeted this. I picked this from his Twitter account, and this is part of the documentation that I believe has been posted to Greg Clark for him to review, because Third Energy's track record in Rydale, and this isn't definitive, it's just a selection, 40 pollution monitoring, unpermitted toxic dumping. And of course, it's a company that's based in the Cayman Islands. The parent is based in the Cayman Islands. Barclays, which owns 97% of Third Energy, the investment fund that they're part of is based in the Cayman Islands. They've had gas leaks, permit breaches, and water contamination. So, Derek Laird, please think long and hard about your role, not only with your security company, I'm sure there's other security work out there, but your role with Third Energy. So, anything you want to add to that, guys? No?
The whole
Joe?
whole operation is full of cowboys, mate. Simple as that. It's just cowboys. We were warned of that, and the light is being shined right on it right now.
I mean, I would ask John Dewar to reflect, but that's not possible. I mean, you know, John Dewar, you've only got to look at the guy's behaviour and, you know, the way in which he conducts himself. He's not capable of reflection. He has a very casual relationship with truth and with facts, which is exactly as we've seen Tom Pickering. And unfortunately, of course, you know, this goes right through the industry. And I mean, sadly, you know, these guys are not concerned about the impact on health, on livestock, on the wider ecology. They're only interested in, you know, the reward. Now, to move on to the policing side of this, as you rightly observed, Joe, this is part of a strategy to effectively destroy the British police as we know it, and certainly as the residents of North Yorkshire think they know it, with Nick Berry riding a 1960s moped across the moors. So this is from the Guardian today, would you believe? Britain's police budgets to lose 700 million by 2020 amid rising crime. The police chiefs put realistic sum at 400 million a year extra, as officer numbers projected to fall by almost 3,000 by the same year. And of course, this is part of the deliberate strategy to remove the police from corporate enforcement. So what they want to do is effectively minimize the police force as we know it and move towards private security. And I mean, not that I necessarily picked on any one of the media, but you know, The Sun, you're nicked. Private security guards from G4S and Serco could be handed power to make arrests. Now, obviously, this won't be rolled out across the whole shebang overnight. It'll start with court enforcement, but you know, we know where it's going. It's the totalitarian tiptoe, as it were. And in The Guardian, revealed police plans, government plans for police privatisation. But that is from 5.5 years ago. And so many of us have been talking about this for some time now, but now we are seeing it up close and personal. And I think I did mention this in the last episode of Fracking Nightmare when I was talking with Kevin Blows. But this was a screen grab from yesterday's edition of UK Column News. And this is a reference to a couple of quotes. And Danny Kruger, Cameron's ally and one-time advisor, was forced to resign as a Tory candidate for Sedgefield after he was quoted as saying that the Conservatives Conservatives plan to introduce a period of creative destruction in the public services. And then Nicholas Bowles, MP, is quoted in The Guardian and elsewhere by saying the Prime Minister and his deputy, Nick Clegg, want their people power revolution to unleash chaotic effects across local communities. Chaotic, therefore, in our vocabulary, is a good thing. And then to top that, this is one of the, or in fact, it was the final paragraph in a high-level government communique that was shared with me at an event in London on October the 8th, where it actually stated that North Yorkshire and Lancashire police have been effectively set up to destroy the last vestiges of trust between the police and the local community. And then this was the final sentence. The objective is to achieve a motivation for change which is greater than the motivation to remain with the status quo. And that motivation for change is about moving corporate enforcement responsibilities from the police to private security, and obviously G4S and Serco being on point. But then the smaller outfits like Next Level Security, NLSS, obviously picking up the the dross contracts that G4S and Serco don't want or can't handle. So does that pretty much concur with your thinking on it, Eddie?
Yeah, and it's terrifying because although I see the police as being fairly corrupt, there is still a degree of accountability there with freedom of information and with complaints and the IPCC. But these corporations will have a steel wall around them, and we won't be able to get anywhere. And it makes me sick that as a protector, I am also enforcing the Tory policy to erode the public's confidence in the police. And I see that every day in my community, where these rural people who have always thought the government was there to protect them and the police were there to serve them are having the veil lifted from their eyes, and they're devastated. And it's a bit of a paradox, because we are the people who are kind of enacting this Tory policy with our confrontation with the police and with disclosing what they're doing. And I don't really know how to do it in any other way.
I mean, it is a real dilemma, that's for sure. Joe, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I just agree with what Eddie's just said. He's bang on the money, really. That's how it is. And how we just got, this injunction is massive in this scale of it. It really is. It's the end of the thin line of democracy. It's human rights, civil rights. It's pretty much everything at stake. And people need to understand this. If we had not challenged this injunction, it would have already now be in place for 7 years. That's how they were trying to get it through. They were hoping no one was going to oppose it. And it's like Eddie just said, there's a lot of these police officers on the front lines who are doing their job. They haven't got a clue what is going on. This is coming from the top ranks. They're looking to get their share stripes before they get sold over to the private security firms. And they're not interested. They're just giving orders like they've always done. But it's sinister. It's sinister. Very sinister.
It is indeed. Well, Joe, you're on point with Joe Corrie, and here's the two of you at the first hearing, and you guys are representing not just the anti-fracking community, but you're effectively representing civil society, because if this injunction goes through, and of course, even if the judge does award the injunction, then it will be appealed. If he doesn't award the injunction, of course, it will be appealed by the other side. So, it's got a long way to run. But the important thing that people understand is that if this injunction is approved, then it will be the first step in the corporations effectively establishing legislation via the courts. So they will effectively be bypassing anything that Parliament put out. Now, Joe Corrie is funding himself, but Joe, you're funding your legal challenge via the Crowd Justice campaign. And it may have changed. I think this is from a couple of hours ago now. But of your £15,000 goal, you're at £13,670. And if anybody feels that they wish to contribute, then please simply search for Joe Boyd Crowd Justice, and you'll be directed directly to this page, and you can make a contribution. It doesn't matter how small, how large, it all helps Joe fight this case. And of course, if the result, and obviously we're waiting now on the judge to issue his ruling, if the result doesn't go the way we all hope it goes, then obviously there will be an appeal. And I know that the legal teams are prepared to take this all the way to the European courts, whilst they still have that opportunity, of course. And I think they'll have that opportunity for quite some time, the way things are rolling. So, Joe, I wish you all the best with that challenge. I know you're juggling the work that you're doing on the injunction with your studies. So we're not expecting to see you too much on the front line, but you know that you're very welcome to come down, and anytime you want to take a break from studies or from the library.
Yeah, sure, mate. Just hope everyone stays safe over there and looks after each other. That's what it's all about.
Well,
even a peaceful
absolutely. Now, Eddie, I've left it till the end of the program, but I think it's important as well that we do reflect honestly, the campaign at Kirby Misperton, because I have to say that in terms of the local community, in terms of the political campaign, in terms of challenging this through all civic and political channels, the campaign has been absolutely exemplary. And there hasn't been any action that could have been taken that hasn't been taken, right up to the judicial reviews. But, I think if we are brutally honest, the disappointment is that the local community, with a number, and albeit a considerable number, of notable exceptions, but the local community has not risen to actually challenge by putting their boots on the ground.
Oh, I don't know if that's quite fair to say. I mean, Frack Free Rydell has a large membership, and there are always a good number of people down there at the gates, day in, day out. There are some vocal people in the village and further afield, most of them further afield, who have taken objection to the direct action. But you only have to look at how well the camp has been supplied with food and love through the whole year that we've been there to know that we are actually really valued by the community, who see us as a very necessary step in taking the campaign to the next level. And it was never going to be the case that we could stop these lorries coming in, but we've slowed them down, and we've caused a furor in the public eye, which has risen the profile of the campaign, and so that we're getting a lot more media attention. Greg Clark hasn't signed off the FRAC. People are listening in high places, and we have it on good authority from someone in the government that MPs in other constituencies are absolutely bloody terrified of the same thing happening in their constituencies. So it might be that the whole of Rydell hasn't been down there, but a considerable number have, and we are having a huge impact.
I absolutely concur with that, but and there's no question, the support from the community, the support of the community to the campaign has been, absolutely outstanding. But ultimately, this is going to come down to boots on the ground. And, whilst all the other awareness is extremely important, and, in South Yorkshire, the South Yorkshire community have done an amazing job, at least equal to that of Rydell, in raising awareness within the community. And, the ultimate goal has to be to convert that awareness into boots on the ground, because, it doesn't matter what the issue is. We have a government that doesn't care how much we raise awareness. It doesn't care how much we lobby. It doesn't care how much we protest in terms of weekend protests wherever they might be, at the gates of a frack site or in London. All they want is to be able to ride roughshod over a community. And that's exactly what they've done at Kirby Misperton. And yes, there may have been some delays, but, and you know, we can certainly still hope that Greg Clark has an attack of conscience, although I won't be holding my breath, and that he doesn't sign off, you know, the permission for Third Energy to frack. But if there is a lesson for every other community around the country that is potentially going to face this abomination, then everything that you're doing, obviously you need to do, but ultimately it has to be about getting boots on the ground. Because had there been 500 people down at the gates of Kirby Misperton every single day, then the kit that is on the well site wouldn't be there now.
Yeah, and I think maybe other communities have to look further afield than North Yorkshire and look towards our southern neighbours in warmer climates like France and Spain, and see how those people react when an unwanted industry comes to town, or where their government goes against them. And they would have been closing down the oil refineries and blocking the train stations, let alone building a couple of bird tables on the road. But, you know, we've got to work with what we've got. I've been happy with the response of the Rydale people. They're not going to go away if this test frack happens, and hopefully the resistance will continue to build.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a battle. I mean, until Greg Clark signs it off and they start actually pressurising the well, the battle's not actually lost. And of course, we can also hold out the hope that Halliburton do a rattling and screw up, and that you know, they lose control of the well, they get fire in the hole, they have to abandon the well. I mean, there's any one of a number of things that you know, could still happen. But you know, as I say, the war is not yet lost. It is one well. It is still only a test frack, but the ultimate goal has to be to get people to rise to the challenge, not just sit back, not just hit the keyboard. These are all important roles, but this is a government, an establishment that really doesn't care what you do as long as you don't actually take any action. So guys, that's going to be, I think, the last episode of Fracking Nightmare for a month or so, because I'm heading back north. Because the one thing that is also for sure is that somehow Third Energy have got to get that kit off the site. And let's see how that goes. So any final words, Joe? Joe?
What did you say?
Any final words? Not literally, of course, but just for tonight.
Yeah, just as I say, just keep getting the word out about this injunction. Let people know what it means in all movements, not just in fracking. This is about everyone. This is about civil liberties in this country, and like, people need to see what's about to occur. If they don't, they come down the road in 2 years' time and they'll say, "How did this happen?" And once it's in the law book and it sets a precedent, it'll be too late. So it's time for people to start talking about this stuff and building within the communities, talking with all movements and bringing solidarity. So yeah, and like I said before, everyone to stay safe up on the front lines in North Yorkshire. It must be cold up there. I know what it's like in winter, and fair play to them all. Solidarity and respect.
And good luck with your challenge in the High Court, Joe. Let's fingers crossed that the judge also has not just an attack of conscience, but actually comprehends the law and upholds the law, and doesn't succumb to the how should I say, the waxing of INEOS. Eddie.
Yeah, I want to just say thanks to Joe and to the other Joe, both Joes, for their tireless work. Like, they've had to go through a mountain of evidence for this trial. I know Joe's been working incredibly hard whilst doing his degree, so thanks, mate. You're doing it for us all. And like you said, not just for the fracking movement, it's for civil liberties across the whole country. So thanks a lot, mate. And Ian, really looking forward to having you back. You've had a month in Mozambique, where have you been? It's going to be great to have our silverback back on the front line.
Yes, I'm working my way up to it. Now, I shall see you soon. Obviously, I have the event in Burnley next week. And so I think pretty much after the event in Burnley next Wednesday, just a quick reminder, that's at the Central Methodist Church Hall, Hargreave Street in Burnley, where we'll be looking at the correlation between the unconventional gas agenda and the agenda to dispose of toxic nuclear waste. And sadly, the correlation between those two objectives may be a lot closer and more pernicious than people perceive. Thanks very much, guys, for joining me tonight and this edition, a bit earlier than usual, but that's because I was saving episode 100 of Humanity versus Insanity for something a bit later on in the year. So I shall see you guys in the not too distant future. But thanks very much for joining us. And Eddie, please pass on my regards to everybody that's been involved at Kirby Misperton over the past month or so. It's been an absolute joy to see some of the creativity that's been put into some of those actions. And I know that for many of the local community, it's been a very emotional period. And sadly, I anticipate that that emotion might increase if Greg Clark doesn't have the desired attack of conscience. So let's see how things unfold. And as I've said, we'll be back in a few weeks, not sure exactly when, but the Kirby Misperton Protection Camp will be maintaining the 8:30 live streams. Is that right, Eddie?
Yeah, internet providing. Yeah, we're hoping to. We've managed 2 days in a row now, so we're doing pretty well. Not sure what's happening tomorrow, but you can expect an 8:30 live stream.
So that's an 8:30 a.m. update from Kirby Misperton on the Kirby Misperton Protection Camp Facebook page. So if you want to get those updates, then check them out on a daily basis. And at some point, I'll be contributing to those as well. So thanks a lot, guys. Absolute pleasure to speak with you. And thanks very much to Mike Robinson, who once again has been working behind the scenes, making sure that all the technicalities of the show are taken care of, not least keeping Eddie on air here, because I know that was a bit tough tonight. So remember, don't take anything that we say at face value, and never try and evangelize on this issue. There's no need to, because the plethora of evidence that is out there speaks for itself. Simply encourage people to do their own research. And as Brian Monk says in Australia, the devastation there started with just one well. Well, even if they do get their one well at Kirby Misperton, let's do everything we possibly can to make sure that that's the only one. Thanks a lot, and I'll catch up with you soon.